A big part of your formula is also finding the right talent, though, to support that initiative.
Yeah, I think hiring talent is probably the number one skill of entrepreneurship. I mean, entrepreneurship at the end of the day is delegation, nothing really more than that. And finding very good people who can, who can do work better than you in specific areas in the business. And finding these people is really hard. So I'll give you an example. The chief of staff, basically, who was secondhand to me when it comes to, running the company. She runs all the operations at Oscar Hamilton. And I was just kind of overwhelmed with everything that I was doing, and I decided I need to hire somebody to help me. So I put together, a job post, chief of staff, salary rather high, top 10%, I think. And I interviewed maybe 70, 80 people, and it was really hard to find somebody. So I guess the biggest thing is make sure you have enough qualified leads in the pipeline. So if you're interviewing for any position, most entrepreneurs, interview 5, 10, 15 people, and then they pick the best possible one. Never do that. Have at least, 70, 80, some people say, 150 plus candidates in the pipeline. Second thing, don't rush it. Take some time. If you honestly feel like the person isn't a player, don't hire them. It's going to cost you in the long run. So ideally, you want to have every single person in your team who's an A player, meaning that they'll take responsibility for their work. You can tell them, accomplish this goal, and they're going to go out there and, accomplish this. Most people are unable to do that. And so if you're giving out tasks for your employees instead of goals, you probably have hired wrong people. Let's say you run a profitable company and you're working 8 to 10 hours and you want to stop. Typical entrepreneur, does that. So write out all the functions that your company has, from accounting, collecting invoices, to sending out sales letters, to checking in with your team, one-on-one meetings, and then make a note to everything that you actually want to do. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And everything that isn't your strength and you don't enjoy doing, you need to delegate with somebody else on your team. So you have this huge list of, tasks. And typically a typical company, a small business has, 40 to 100 functions like that. At Oscar Hamilton, we have around 70 functions that get executed each day. And for each function, you need to find the person who's going to be directly responsible for that function to make sure it gets done. You don't want to have 2 people to be in charge of a function. You want to have 1 individual responsible. So if something falls through, who's in charge of that. Mm-hmm. You also want to have a backup person and cross-train them. So in case first person gets sick, leaves the company, there's a replacement to go right away. So for example, if you have somebody on your team doing sales calls, they get sick, there's a second person, ready to take over. The third part of the puzzle is have processes and SOPs and how-to guides. Every time anybody on your team does a task, second time, they are required to write it down in a written or a video format. So for example, if I am going to collect invoices the first time, the second time I am required to write it down so I don't have to do it again. And that's sort of a common practice. So once you have all these functions, written out, you will only end up with 5 or 6 things that you actually really enjoy doing. For me personally, it's doing one-on-ones with my team, hiring, firing, and setting the strategy. That's the only thing that I do. When it comes to, sales, when it comes to accounting, when it comes to management, when it comes to sort of the micro level that happens on day-to-day in company, you can outsource or delegate 99% of that. And entrepreneurs often feel that they need to do it all, but in most of the time they don't, and they're not very good at it. So being self-aware that, hey, give yourself a bit of space and hire great people, create those task lists, give out the tasks, and keep really tight eye on processes. And all of a sudden you have all this time in your hands and you end up working, hour or 2.